Welcome new and old friends, my name is 2482, and today 2 got us 4 ghost/paranormal stories. So turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. Mommy, please help me. The pleading voice of my son echoed all around me. After spending days lost in this damn forest, the birds' voices have turned from sad to torturing. The pizza place I work at has a spirit watching us do our closing duties. By Your Gay Uncle 2112. So I work at a pizza place that is like a 3-minute drive to a very haunted cemetery that was on ghost adventures at one point. We are also on a very busy road that at least seen 2 deaths every month from drunk drivers. So I don't know where this shadow figure who watches us comes from. I've only been working at this pizza place for a year, and almost every night he does something. He's a tall figure that I've heard speak sometimes. One time, both my managers had to leave, so they put me in charge of closing. I was pretty cool with it because who wouldn't want to blast their favorite music in the dining room speakers? So I saw someone in the kitchen just staring at me, and I heard a male's voice ask me if I cleaned the bathrooms. It didn't click in my mind it wasn't a manager because it was 4 a.m. and I just got through a 10-hour shift running off a monster and a slice of pizza. I look up to see a tall man in the kitchen, slowly into the darkness of it all. So I was like, what the fuck? And waited outside. Another time was when I was helping a customer carry out around 6 of our biggest pizzas and some of our food on our catering menu. Without giving away where I work, 2 of those pizzas could feed a class of 20 with a decent-sized slice. Her car was in the back of our parking lot, which is always an absolute mess. While walking, I felt the same feeling I feel around the spirit telling me to stay by the car for a couple of seconds to help the customer make sure everything is secure. I think he saved my life when a car came in speeding and nearly hit somebody. It may be stupid, but I feel like I would have been killed. I don't think this spirit is evil. I just think the spirit may be lost or something. The building isn't that old at all. I'm now only thinking about this because I was talking to my 2 managers about this. I'll share their stories since I'm certain they don't use Reddit. So I'm going to call my manager Daisy. Daisy would do her run around before leaving to make sure everything is clean for the morning shift. She says that she always felt followed, and the feeling is always followed up by something of our trays being thrown to the floor. Nothing was ever thrown at her, though. I feel like he's just trying to grab her attention. Or when she's sitting in the dining room doing paperwork, she absolutely refuses to look in the kitchen or any of the mirrors because even if he may be friendly, it's still unsettling. I've never interacted with the spirit because I'm scared that it could be dangerous even if he's friendly. I refuse to even close by myself. Should I even be worried about him? My sister flung a phone at my face while I walked towards her laughing maniacally. I couldn't hide my glee as I ran the lawnmower over her phony body and watched as the blades tore her once beautiful face to shreds. My haunted college house. I'm not sure it was human. By Bikini6125. Hello all, I just recently joined the sub and I figured I'd share my paranormal experience. I moved out of my parents' house for the first time and rented a house about 10 minutes away from my friend and his sister. This started out normal enough, going to school, going to work, college parties, etc. The first experience we had involved random banging noises coming from the basement. It came up in conversation between us, but we didn't think too much of it. Things began escalating after a few months of living there, however. One day I returned home from work and sat down in the living room. I began hearing voices from my roommate's bedroom and thought my friend's sister must be home. I walked over to say hello and the voices stopped. No one was home. I thought that was weird, but went back to the living room to sit down. The voices started up again and lasted about 15 minutes. I could only make out a word here or there, so I can't speak to any specifics. But I heard we and them, and that's about it. My male roommate had a cat, and it would sleep in his room every night. My roommate told me that he awoke to something grabbing or touching his feet in the middle of the night. He thought it was his cat's tail or something, but when he sat up, the cat was asleep on the floor. As a college house, we frequently had house parties with our close friends. Our friend Corey had often passed out in the recliner in the living room. One morning, after he spent the night, he told us he felt something grab his feet, and after a few minutes, it pulled him out of the chair by his feet onto the floor. At this point, I figured the house was haunted, but I wasn't overly worried about it. The atmosphere changed dramatically, however, when I would get this strong feeling of dread and hate towards me when I was home alone. This feeling was very strong in the basement. Whenever leaving the house, I would get this distinct feeling something was watching me leave. Now, the cherry on top. I was asleep one night when I suddenly woke with that feeling of dread. I looked across the room, and there was a figure standing with its arms resting on top of the desk chair. I couldn't make out all of its features, but I distinctly remembered dark curly hair, its eyes, and that button-up shirt it was wearing. At first, I thought someone must have broken into our house. I stood up on my bed and confronted the figure. I asked, "Who the fuck are you?" It didn't answer me, and after getting angrier, I threatened it and took a step forward. It disappeared. I didn't tell anyone what I saw because I couldn't be 100% sure it wasn't a dream, and I didn't want to freak my roommates out further. A month or so later, we were having another house party. The group of people there were all close friends. Our friend Amanda went downstairs to get her purse that she had left down there, and soon came running up the stairs hysterical. She said she saw a dude standing in the corner who she had never seen before. We went to investigate and found nothing. I asked her to describe him, and she described the figure I saw exactly. Again, I didn't tell anyone about what I saw in my room. We moved out soon after this, and I was glad to be rid of that place. Having never learned to swim, I was terrified when I fell overboard in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. As I sank beneath the waves and took what should have been my last breath, I was even more horrified to learn that I could breathe underwater as I continued sinking even deeper. Very Strange Encounter on Mount Shasta by WhiteGlinko. I've recently moved to Weed, California, a small town next to Mount Shasta, for work. I'm an avid hiker and I love exploring, so naturally, 2 days ago I decided to go for a hike on the mountain one of my days off. Not entirely sure why, but I decided to drive my car very deep into the forest surrounding the base of the mountain. As far as a dirt road will allow me anyways. It was around 3 p.m. with a clear sky, so I was very confident and enjoyed the scenery as I got out of my car and started my hike, heading closer to the mountain. At first it was your regular everyday hike, lots of birds and squirrels around, that smell of nature that fills your lungs as you walk across the terrain. It wasn't until I reached a small dried up river that I noticed something was off. As I stopped to look at the dried up river and take pictures, I noticed that it was strangely very, very quiet. No birds chirping, no signs of squirrels or any other animals, and even the sounds of the wind you hear when you're on a mountain seemed to be completely gone. At the time, I thought it was just an odd coincidence and started walking alongside the river. But as I kept walking and being able to only hear my own footsteps, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not the kind of feeling that makes you think that someone is outside your window watching you. The kind of feeling that makes you feel like multiple people or things are observing your every movement, studying you. I never had that kind of feeling in my life, but what happened after made me completely forget about that feeling. I suddenly started to hear something out of nowhere that sounded like angelic humming, or maybe a song with no lyrics, but it also sounded strangely electric, like the sound of a telephone line makes. It wasn't very loud, but it was enough to make me look in the direction it was coming from. I looked to the other side of that dried up river that had multiple trees and other foliage to see someone or something looking straight at me. It almost looked like a ghost, with it looking completely white. But this thing was very clearly there. It almost looked like it was wearing a robe, but I couldn't see any feet, hands, or even a face, although it had an oval head. However, I could feel it looking straight at me, almost as if it was trying to remember every detail. Even from far away, I could tell that the entire body had a very weird texture, almost like porcelain, but if porcelain was a silky fabric. It was very obviously not human. I was very understandably in complete shock and terror, frozen in place, kinda scared. We both looked at each other for what felt like forever, but it was most likely 20 to 30 seconds. I very, very slowly started walking backwards. I don't think it took more than 2 steps when it tilted its head, as if it was curious or even surprised at what I was doing. All the while, I could still hear that electric, angelic humming, and I swear it got a little louder when I took those steps back. When I turned my head to look behind me to make sure the way was clear so I could run, the song suddenly stopped, abruptly, without warning. This shocked me, and when I turned back to look at the thing, it was gone. No sign of it anywhere. As soon as I saw that it disappear, I ran as fast as I could, following the path I took back. Even after it had disappeared, and while I was running, I could still feel like I was being watched from all sides. I almost tripped a few times in how fast I was going. When I got to my car, the sounds of the animals and the mountain wind suddenly came back, but I was still scared on my mind and drove as fast as I could away from the mountain. I never had anything paranormal happen to me in the past, and I've honestly always been very skeptical of stuff like that. But this experience has left me questioning a lot of things. I don't think I want to go back on that mountain. I've even had nightmares about the experience. I'm not even sure what I saw or what to call it. I was riding my bike down the road till a truck hit me in the back, making me almost fall. As the man came behind me, I took my knife out and stabbed him in the heart, finally catching my prey. I have no idea what to do, and I really need all the advice I can get. By Squishygushyy. I think I'm being haunted and I don't know what to do. I moved into an old farmhouse a few years ago, roughly about 7 years. There's a little cemetery in the front yard with about 6 gravestones, I think. It's hard to tell, my mom never cleaned it up and they've been dead for over 100 years or so. But in the beginning, before fully moving in, doorknobs would jingle, only upstairs. Doors would close upstairs while we were talking in the kitchen downstairs. We just brushed it off and assumed it was just because the air coming on or the air coming through the cracked windows pushing a door shut. We all wake up with scratches and bruises on our legs, back, arms, stomach, chest, wherever, but I'm most affected out of everyone. I've woken up with scratches in the form of a smiley face. I have had the same exact dream, but with a slightly different involving some kind of demon. And I think I might have brought something into my house playing with a Ouija board when I was younger. I'll explain everything shortly. When we first moved into the house, I was scared like a normal kid would be of the dark and things, but I would see dark shadows, dark blob-like figures moving at night in the darkness in my room. I picked my room because it had a hospital bed in it, and the door was bolted shut. I was super into creepy stuff / supernatural things. A week after moving in, my mom had to get cable set up, and the guy came over and he did his usual stuff. But then he had to move to the basement to put the cable through the floor and everything, etc., etc. Being that we lived on a farm and my stepdad was the only one home during the time that he was there, he had to go out and feed the cows while he was in the basement finishing up. The man said while he was working he heard something, not quite sure, it's been years. So he turned around and at the top of the steps there was this figure of a man standing in the basement doorway looking at him. He told my stepdad, and we just decided to ignore it. Weeks pass, and one night I get out of bed at about 12 or 1 a.m. to go pee, and go to pass the steps to go downstairs, and hear footsteps coming up towards me. Someone hitting their hand on the railing. I froze for a second in fear, and chose to run back to my bedroom. The following weeks after that, things would go missing as soon as we laid them down, and we would find them in our shoes or little silly places that we never would put them down. Like an apple on the counter, and we couldn't find it, and the next day it would be in the car. Little things like that, constantly. I thought it was funny, and I told my family it was just the ghost and was playing a cute trick on us, and I gave it a name. My whole family refers to it as Robert. And when things go missing, we go, "Robert, can you give it back?" Or, "Oh, that's just Robert," etc., etc. A year goes by, these things are always happening. Thumps, rain on the steps, things being stolen. I started to ask my mom for a Ouija board. I want one. I want to talk to the ghosts with my friends. I want to scare my brothers. I play all the dumb ghost games online, like Cat Scratch, Sandman, and Bloody Mary, the Charlie game. Every single scary story you look up to play with friends at sleepovers, I was playing it. And they always worked. Not Bloody Mary. But the Cat Scratch game always worked. And I loved it. I was addicted. And I wanted more, so I moved up. I wanted a Ouija board. I wanted to talk to the real deal. I asked my mom and she was oblivious, so she bought me one. I would play with my friends, cousins, my brothers, and by myself. Sometimes I moved it to scare them, and sometimes I didn't move it at all. And it moved by itself, especially when I did it alone. And I thought it was a dumb trick the board did so people would buy it. I was a child. I didn't know any better. After I started using the Ouija board, I stopped for a while and things died down a lot in the house. For a while. The only thing that would happen was I would see the shadow at night. All the time, dark black blobs, sometimes they had arms that would come out of the dark masses that they were. My stepdad was outside one day and his truck was off and the key wasn't even in it and the truck revved its engine. I remember my stepdad telling me this clearly. I even asked my ex-boyfriend to back the story up for me because I told him as soon as it happened. And he told me it did happen and he remembered. I asked my family about it just recently and they told me they had no recollection of it ever happening. No one remembered it at all. Everything seems to be getting progressively worse. A few months ago, I was sitting watching Family Guy, glanced down at my phone for a second and glanced back up, and the whole family was standing on the screen staring at me. And the whole screen was black with a darkish red tint, and their eyes were black. So black. And blood was gushing out of their mouths, but it was dark red, just like the dark black tint the screen was, but more red. I was so scared. I started to cry and looked down at my phone trying to call someone. I looked back up and it was back to normal. I tried researching if it was a part of an episode and asked many people, but no one could tell me anything. Recently, I've been getting more scratches, and even scratches in the form of smiley faces, which I have pictures of, and bruises, deep, dark, purple bruises. I have pictures of those also. And my mom gets those more than anyone else in the house. And my mom, when she sleeps, she does astral projection. I think that's what it's called. It's out of the body experience. She watches herself sleep at night. She told me once she was watching herself and my stepdad sleep, and she saw these hands come out from under the bed and grab his ankle and start to pull on him. She then tried to wake him up, but couldn't, and ended up waking herself up. I asked her about that recently as well, and she had no recollection of that either. But my brothers remember her talking about it. More recently, I'll be trying to sleep, and I'm almost asleep, and my shirt will start to rise up, and I'll feel this weird tingly feeling on my skin, and have to pull my shirt down, and will then be fully awake and freaking out. I will hear music. A few days ago, I heard what sounded like carousel music coming from outside my room at 3 a.m. The stomps and the running up the steps happen almost every night. But the main reason I'm putting this on this subreddit is because recently I've been telling whatever has been hurting me and my family to go away and leave me alone, and an online friend has been saying it's over the phone as well. A week or so ago, I had a dream that me and my boyfriend were on the phone, and I got scared for some reason. The dream felt super real. I thought it was real. So he told me to tell it to go away, so I proceeded to tell whatever it was to go away, and laughed. I kept repeating the third time I said go away after I heard laughter. It was not my voice anymore. It was the scariest fucking voice I have ever heard in my life. The most demonic voice I have ever fucking heard. I'm tearing up right now typing this. And I couldn't control my voice or what I was saying anymore, and I just kept saying go away in this demonic voice, and my boyfriend who was on the phone in the dream was so scared. I finally got my voice back and I was crying and I said sorry, but it scared me so bad I woke up shaking and crying. I woke up with some scratches after that dream, but they weren't that bad. Last night I had the exact same dream, except of him using me to speak. I started to breathe rather hard, and spit started to come out of my mouth, and my eyes started to roll in the back of my head. My boyfriend started freaking out again, and I started crying again. And it stopped, but this time my boyfriend said, I think I gotta go, because he was so scared. And I begged him not to leave me alone. And that's when the demonic voice came through the phone this time, and I got scared and hung up in the dream. After hanging up, the voice kept going through the phone. Couldn't understand what he was saying, I think because I was scared, and then I woke up. Last night before this dream happened, I woke up 50 times and was so exhausted that the last time I woke up before I had the dream, I felt something sitting down on my bed, but I was too exhausted to stay awake, so I just curled up in a ball. And before I had went to bed hours before, my brother had showed me these huge, really bad scratches on his leg. They were super long and almost to the point of bleeding. My stepdad also had a nightmare last night, but I haven't gotten around to asking him what it was about yet. I have also been dealing with super bad migraines for months now, and they've been so bad to the point where I've just curled up in a ball with sunglasses and a hoodie over my head, with no noises just to get any comfort. I wake up in the mornings nauseous and gagging, and have been put on multiple migraine medications. The pills I'm on now seem to be helping, but I still have them sometimes and still get nauseous in the mornings. I used to vomit midday at the house. I don't know what to do or what's happening, and I really need advice. Please, if anyone can help or give any input, I would greatly appreciate it. There's nothing outside, my husband told me, pulling his head back into our tent and hurriedly zipping it closed. I let out a sigh of relief before he continued. Babe, you don't understand. There's a void out there. Like, literally nothing. And with that, we're near the end of this video. I'd like to thank the writers who let me read their stories. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you all stay safe. And I would like to thank my patrons for their support, and welcome a brand new one, dearly beloved. Welcome and thank you so much. Now, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. If you'd like to help this channel/podcast, please just share it with anyone who might enjoy it. You'd be surprised how much that helps. If you'd like to help in other ways, I do have a Patreon, merch, and PayPal. All of this will always be appreciated and never expected. Now last, but never least, I would love a comment, so let's get you that Sunday word first. Last week's word was prize. On screen right now and at Twitter is everyone who wrote me a sentence using that word. Thank you guys as always, you're awesome. Now, let's move on to this week's word, and I hope you're brave enough to write me a sentence, because the word is brave. If you're on YouTube, write me a sentence down below using this word, or if you're on the podcast, go to Twitter, @me, using this word in a sentence as well, and you'll be in next week's photo. But as always, guys, thank you for watching and listening. It really means a lot to me. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.